This presentation is an overview of the Madeline Duggar Andrews Middle School Understanding the 2013 MCAS Student Achievement and Growth Model. It is important to understand that the MCAS test is a criterion reference test, which basically shows achievement through the grade levels and not everybody at the same starting point, versus norm reference test where everybody is at the same spot and we see where the growth occurs. Here is an example of a norm reference test. If you look, everyone is starting at the same place no matter what their ability level is. Nobody's ahead of the game and no one is behind the game, but everyone will have a different outcome in the end. This example of a criterion reference test is a little bit different. Let's say that we have a mountain that everyone's climbing, and we'll call that the MCAS mountain. If you look, not everybody starts at the same level. So you have a gentleman that is higher above another one as they're climbing the same mountain, which is very difficult for us to understand. Is this an accurate measure of a student's performance or show growth in an area where they are improving? If you look at this slide, you'll see that the DESE has determined that typical growth is between the 40th and 60th percentile, where 60 and 100 is higher growth and 40 to 0 is lower growth. Obviously, we want to stay within the typical growth range, but it would be obviously good to see growth even higher as you move on. The DESE has come up with these certain rules of thumb. As stated before, typical student growth percentiles are between 40 and 60% on most tests. Students or groups outside this range will either have a higher or lower growth than typical growth, as seen between 40 and 60%. And then differences of fewer than 10 student growth percentage points are not likely or educationally meaningful, basically stating that if you're not showing a significant amount of growth between a 10 range, then it's not really going to show whether things are going bad or good. It's basically a greater amount of percentage points that will show you that growth, or if there's a less growth that is being produced. This slide shows growth in grade 7 between 3 students regarding their ELA MCAS exam. If you look at each student, Gina, Harry, and Ivy, you will see that in the end, each student growth percentile in 2008 is different. The reason why Gina has stayed at 35 is because she has not shown any significant growth throughout the years. 230, 230, and 230. And everyone in her cohort has not gone above or below that number. She is in the 35 growth percentile. Harry, on the other hand, if you look, has actually gone down in his growth percentile because he had started up high at 248 and stayed at 248, but had a few percentage point drops in his 7th grade, and that put him down to a 25% growth. If you look at Ivy, which is what we are looking for typically, starting in 5th grade at 214, going in 6th grade staying the same at 214, but then going into grade 7 at 226, within her cohort of being in the 214 and then moving to 226, she has moved up to 92 growth percentile. That being stated, what we try to look for is improvement through a lower set of scores to a higher set of scores. When the bar is set up high, you have to maintain that bar high, otherwise your growth percentage will not show any significant data. This slide represents the spring 2013 MCAS School Achievement and Growth in ELA for the Madeline Duggar Andrews. If you look, with ELA, we are on par with the state. And if you look, all 3 grade levels are also between the 40 and 60 percentage range for growth as determined by the state. So the Andrews is doing significantly well as they move forward. When you look at this graph, what you want to see is higher growth and higher achievement. And in ELA, that is starting to head that direction. What we want to avoid is lower growth and lower achievement. This chart is the spring 2013 MCAS school achievement and growth for mathematics in the Madeline Duggar Andrews School. If you're looking, again, we are still within typical growth in all three grades, between 40 and 60%. The state obviously is a little bit higher, and what we are striving to do is to make sure that we are achieving higher growth and higher achievement. Over time, we want to see those dots move up higher as well to the right of that graph. So what do we do with this growth and achievement data for MCAS? Well, parents, students, and educators will use these results to follow student progress. We at the Andrews also try to identify strengths, weaknesses, and gaps in the curriculum and instruction to improve it. With the new Common Core, we're trying to fine-tune the curriculum and make sure that's aligned with all standards that the state is putting out. We also try to gather diagnostic information that can be used to improve student performance through these criterion reference tests. And we also use this data to identify students who may need additional support and services throughout their school career. Based on the last slide, at the Andrews we're following an RTI model. We are using a pyramid of interventions in order to help all students do well on what they need to show significant progress. In order to do their growth, we look at their test scores, we look at screener data, and we determine what tier fits each student so that they can learn and show growth in areas that they need to. Tier 1, which we think occurs with 80% of our students, we try to do within the class setting. Tier 2, we target certain students based on their universal screeners as well as their MCAS data. Tier 3, we try to get those students into a smaller group intervention to see if we can get them to understand and show more growth. As Tier 4, we are now heading into individual education plans and accommodations to make sure that the student is being successful. With the MCAS data and our RT Universal Screener data, all students take 3 assessments in the fall, winter, and spring for math and now ELA. The goal is to see a growth as you move through each time frame of benchmark. So if you look at this chart, students' X performance range is within the average for the fall, winter, and spring benchmark. As they continue through the year, you will see that a straight line is now showing growth in a diagonal direction, as we said before, showing higher growth and higher achievement. Please take the time to go over and see how the state determines growth data and how we utilize it at the Andrews in order to show that our students are showing significant growth throughout the years.